So the purpose of this video is to present the peace plan of the People's Rights Advocacy Platform. Through the leadership of the chair, Capo Daniel, we have been able to work for the last couple of months on a series of suggested solutions to end the crisis and to bring about options for greater substantive autonomy for the two regions of the Northwest and the Southwest. The peace plan is a plan that is undergirded by a philosophy of one country, two people, which we believe is a middle ground solution that should move us forward from where we are at the moment, address the challenges on the ground at the moment, and bring forth a governance arrangement that takes into consideration the aspirations of our people. So to understand the background and the context of where this plan is coming from and what we seek to attain through the specific plan, it's through a means of presenting the short-term and medium-term priorities of the People's Rights Advocacy Platform. So the idea is to pursue cessation of hostilities and the resolution of the current conflict through a negotiated settlement, and developing and mainstreaming the proposition of substantive autonomy of what territory has been known as the former British Southern Cameroons through the devolution of institutional and constitutional power by means of constitutional and institutional reform. Now, we want to promote a model of solidarity and consultation and dialogue among Anglophones, Southern Cameroons, Cameroonians, Ambazonians, people from the Northwest and the Southwest, about the economic and political future of our region, and specifically about our relationship with the state of Cameroon, revisiting the basics and the foundations and the tenets of the reunification arrangement, gentlemanly agreement of 1961, its evolution, its current historical context, the elements that have been maintained, managed, disregarded to predispose us to conflict in order to lay a foundation that is going to move us from where we are to a peaceful, prosperous future as one country, two people. And so, in so doing, we then want to propose this peace plan that contains elements of the socio-economic, political, and humanitarian roadmap for a devolved region. So the plan as a whole is going to be presented in 4 parts. In today's presentation, I would principally be covering the resolution of conflict component of the plan's proposal. The plan has other sections that we will be focusing on, including the future of Anglophone Cameroon through and various proposed constitutional arrangements that we want to put on the table, a humanitarian package and return of refugees and support for political prisoners and IDPs, and of course, the dealing with the core issues that explain the uniqueness of our region, looking at the management of specific sectors like education, natural resources, international trades, sort of coming to terms with the proposed components of a devolution arrangement that mirrors the kinds of aspiration that we intend to propose as our relationship with the state of Cameroon, building upon the past experiences and history and dealing with the current challenges. So each and every one of these would be treated in part, but for today's presentation, the objective is to just focus on the conflict resolution component, and we will come back with the other presentations in the next couple of weeks that sort of gives a peek into some of our suggestions on the other 3-4 components. So this presentation is focusing on the resolution of the current conflict. Now, the idea behind having a conversation on the resolution of the current conflict is the realization that after 8 years, we're in a sort of an impasse. We have seen the limitations of the military strategy adopted by the Republic of Cameroon. We have also seen the efforts invested in trying to prosecute a war of liberation and all of the challenges that are involved. And we have now faced with a situation where there is a continuous degeneration of the quality of life of our people on the ground. We are 8 years down the line, stuck in an impasse, captured by the reality of transition into the Third Republic and the Republic of Cameroon, and confronted with the consequence that this current conflict is imposing upon our region, and the realization that there is no help coming from anywhere else. And we need to, as a people, have a collective conversation that says, how do we get from where we are to where we desire to be? How do we bring this conflict to an end? How do we silence the guns? But not just silence the gun as an objective, an end objective in itself, We silence the guns in the manner that gets us to be able to get the gains and put in place institutional and constitutional mechanisms to make sure that we never find ourselves again as a people in a situation where we are predisposed to conflict, debating and arguing about the same issues that caused this conflict in the first place. Where do we go to from here? From a conflict resolution perspective is what we are attempting to discuss in this specific video. So the overall theme of our conflict resolution approach is the proposal of a new beginning and a new relationship. By a new beginning, we are taking cognizance of the fact that we have come from a specific arrangement from 1961. We have seen its evolution and its complications and its limitations, and we firmly, fundamentally believe that from where we are, we need to lay the foundations for a new relationship amongst the people, a new relationship between the people, a new relationship between the people of the former British Southern Cameroons and the state of Cameroon, which goes to conversations around the state. So the parties are desirous to bring an end to political violence and to find peaceful and sustainable solutions to the crisis that is confronting our country and to address the humanitarian crisis of the Anglophone region. So the plan and the positions adopted within the plan expresses and is built out of an understanding of the inviolability of the territorial, linguistic, cultural, and identitarian identity of the Anglophone as a model of self-governance or federalism to the devolution of power. Now, the form and the shape and name to which we finally give or settle as an arrangement will be the fruit of consultation of the people and an agreement between the people and the government of Cameroon. But we do fundamentally believe that the uniqueness of the people, as has been documented and registered in several agreements, is a point of departure that makes for us to aspire towards a new beginning in our relationship between the Anglophone region and the central government of Cameroon. We need to jointly participate in defining what that future relationship should look like. And that is what this plan is about. So, the approach that we have adopted is to highlight certain proposed key ingredients of the peace plan. The peace plan document is a document that's a whole document that we are consulting stakeholders with. We have submitted for engagement, inputs, and approval with various stakeholders, and we are trying to get the backing of the international community and key domestic stakeholders around the plan. So, because of the consultative process that's ongoing, I will not go into the devolution or the development of the entire document, but just to highlight key elements, especially in this specific presentation on the conflict resolution component. So, we are proposing that there be a monitoring and enforcement of the ceasefire through a series of political agreements. Now, we are proposing a permanent ceasefire premised on the following conditions to be met: establishment of an Anglophone monitoring and peace mission established by the United Nations and AU contributing countries with the mandate of enforcing and monitoring the implementation of the commitment made by the parties to this peace agreement in the form of a memorandum of understanding. And we also believe that the AMPM should be given the legitimacy and authority through with enforcement powers to be agreed upon in a separate agreement to include decision-making powers over disputed cases. So we are therefore suggesting the establishment of an AMPM as a United Nations mandated mission for the resolution of the conflict. We also believe that a very important part of resolving the conflict should include having plans for dealing with the ex-combatants and the people that have taken up arms against for the last couple of years. So we do, in the peace plan, we have a proportion for integration of armed forces and demobilization. We believe that the way of going about this is to contemplate not exactly a restoration of the defunct mobile wing, but to contemplate within the political arrangements by constitutional and institutional reform, a devolution of the powers of the intelligence, public order policing, and general peace and security portfolio of the central state to the region, of course under the supervision of the AMPM, and that any agreement that would have to be arrived at ought to contain mechanisms of the integration of former combatants It's our view that they should be involved in municipal policing. It's our view that they should be involved in the intelligence and the security cluster of some sorts within the region. By virtue of the fact that they have an understanding and mastery of the terrain, by virtue of the fact that it provides an incentive for them to deal with the rising insecurity that would be the result and the consequence of this post-conflict scenario. Most conflict countries, after the end of the conflict and peace, the return of peace, have to do with a very long-term consequence of societal trauma and rising rate of insecurity caused by the free flow and availability of weapons for during the season of the conflict. We need to put in place, therefore, measures to rehabilitate some of those ex-combatants, not only psychologically and reintegrate them into society through the creation of economic opportunities, but also involving them to be part of the peace process through the engagement into the peace and security and policing cluster. So the plan also proposes, therefore, as would be expected, that general amnesty should be granted and to all political prisoners, and following the release and followed by or accompanied by the release of all political prisoners, such that every citizen of Cameroon and all persons that have been granted such amnesty and release should be granted all their political, economic, and social rights, as well as the right to participate freely in the political process, both at the Anglophone level and at the national level. We feel that is a very important component of the reintegration of both political prisoners and ex-combatants into mainstream society. And our people really need to understand we do not have any other society outside of the one we have. We have one, and that one society includes everybody, including those that have fought, those that did not fight, and those who have gone to prison and have been accused of certain crimes. In the spirit of amnesty and peace and reconciliation, we feel that these people should be reintegrated into mainstream society and be afforded all their political rights of participation moving forward. To support the peace and reconciliation mission and the mission of the AMPM, we suggest the establishment of a reintegration fund that would provide economic facilitation funded by the central government of Cameroon to former combatants and political prisoners who have received amnesty. And economic facilitation for reintegration should include aspects around their social security, support to find social housing, vocational training, and employment. Of course, such a reintegration fund should be open for contribution from the private sector and as well as from international partners and donors, wherein we are providing the financing mechanism that says, let us facilitate the peaceful transition and the re-establishment into a normal and functional society. A dedicated portion of this reintegration fund which we are proposing should go towards the physical and mental health support for former combatants, including, of course, access to psychosocial support. And all former combatants and persons affiliated with or perceived to have supported the pursuit of the right to self-determination should be eligible following training to be integrated into what we have proposed as our municipal police, our regional fire brigade, and our regional territorial guard. So these are financing mechanisms and institutional constructs that we are proposing to come out of the peace resolution process to integrate the former combatants into normal societies to afford the society the possibility of picking up from whence it is and proceeding into normalization. We believe that the approach that should be adopted should be through the pursuit of restorative justice. Restorative justice versus punitive justice. We are hoping that all the parties involved in the resolution of the conflict are not going to gloat over the superiority of their strategy and their supposed victory. We have a society to reconstruct, we have a country to build, we have a nation to build. Now, Cameroon may be a state and may have been established as a state since 1960 to 1961, but a nation is a collective of people who identify with and belong to a common identity. In the process of the reconstruction of that common identity, we need to learn from the mistakes of the past and learn to respect our individualities and our respective identities and lay down the foundations for the establishment of a nation, a collective of a people who identify with each other and see in themselves a common destiny. This is why the pursuit of restorative justice is a critical component of such an endeavor, and that is why we propose that there be an establishment of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to pursue restorative justice. So peace agreement that will be established should lead to the establishment of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission with a task of formulating and determining measures of reconciliation. Reconciliation for the victims, reconciliation between the victims and the perpetrators, reconciliation between the people and the state of Cameroon, reconciliation among the people in their dividedness, reconciliation between the people, and reconciliation between this region and the rest of the regions of Cameroon, and reconciliation amongst ourselves. So the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, drawing from examples of lessons of countries like South Africa, should provide an avenue for the victims of the conflict to gain access to restorative justice, and it should be well thought of and manned and coordinated by eminent individuals that are ambassadors of peace as recognized by the people. So this has been presented thus far are just some elements of the peace plan, focusing on the peace, the conflict resolution component of it. But as PRAP, we do have a proposed roadmap and implementation strategy. We do acknowledge in all humility that there are a lot of people who are working extremely hard to find solutions to the same problems, and we therefore do not suggest that we have presented or are going to present a silver bullet that will solve all our problems. That's why we believe that it has to be a consultative process. So as part of our implementation strategy, we are laying out a process of consultation, engagement with stakeholders, stakeholder mapping and stakeholder engagement, which first of all in step one intends to invite the participation of everyone into what we have called the People's Consultative Council or General Assembly, which we will call the PRAP General Assembly. Now, these are people who have listened to us for the last couple of weeks, who believe in the approach that we are suggesting, and who want to come on board to make their suggestions. And just to say we support you, just to say that we believe in the approach that you have adopted, just to say we want to give peace a chance. So we are going to put contact details in the next slide for any such people who are interested in joining us to come forward. From that process of the development of people joining the General Assembly, or the General Council, the People's Consultative Council, we are going to, by virtue of expertise, identify and bring into an advisory council a group of technical experts that will advise us on the key components of this plan and the loopholes and the blind spots and the things that we are missing and the approaches, and also facilitate our engagement with all those who are also involved in trying to find a solution to this current crisis in one way or the other. In the result or in the spirit of this, we will therefore announce in the next couple of weeks a series of consultations and dialogues that we are going to proceed with to take this plan to the people, to get their inputs, to say this is what we have thought of, we have documented this, we are getting international support behind this. What do you think and how do you want? So PRAP is going to be organizing stakeholder consultations in Canada, in South Africa, North America, in Europe, probably in the UK. And if our people in Asia obviously call for us to come down, that we will come and do that. All of this consultation and engagement with stakeholders on ground zero and ground one and in the diaspora should lead to our sometime what we want to call establishment of the People's Parliament that is supposed to solve the question of legitimacy. Now, there are a variety of constituent groups domestically in the diaspora in ground one that are constituted into established groups. I'm thinking about the consortium, I'm thinking about all the other groups that have been established overseas, I'm thinking about all the other groups and associations and unions that are established back home, teachers union, lawyers union, and all the people who have been key stakeholders, coalition of civil societies, coalition for dialogue and negotiation, a variety, as well as our established competent authorities in the regional councils and the traditional leaders and our religious leaders. We should be able to, through some consultative process, put together a people's parliament, a people's congress, which is a representative structure that represents the views and the opinions of the diversity of our people. We think that succeeding to establish such an entity would be a feat and an accomplishment in itself. But we want to put it out there that that would be our desire to be able to get our people to work together, towards the establishment of the Anglophone voice to address the issues and the challenges that we are facing as a people. So as a result of that, we want to then go ahead and set up a very broad and inclusive consultative group that would deal with the current challenges as it were, stop the bleeding in our societies, have a conversation about the economic impact of the conflict and how we can do a few things differently, coordinate our interventions and our actions amongst ourselves as a people, and obviously address the concerns that are inflicted upon the most vulnerable of our people, which are our refugees, our prisoners, and our IDPs. So, such a broad, inclusive, consultative group, we are hoping that as a result of the series of consultation, we will get people who will be willing to work together across the board, across the divide, across the tendencies, across the various groups and the various constituent entities to create some sort of constituent assembly that becomes a voice that is legitimate to not just speak on behalf of the people, but to be able to provide a platform for ongoing engagement and consultation as a people. If you've listened to this and any of this makes sense to you and it feels like something that you'd want to know more or you want to join, we've provided a series of numbers here for North America, for South Africa, for Europe and Asia. Please feel free to reach out to any of these numbers. We are going to be creating a separate email address and links to our Facebook page and social media platforms, or to engage me, or engage Capo Daniel, or engage any of the people that you know directly involved in this and says, I hear what you people are saying, I agree with this, or I disagree with this approach, but I would want to be part of the process. We are proposing to adopt a positive approach to finding solutions. Nobody has all the answers, and we therefore are not suggesting that we do. But we are trying to create a platform where we can have an ongoing engagement. My opinion may just be 1% of the truth. I need your 5%, I need your 70% of the perspective, because we must come together and must work together. So if you feel the need to reach out, to be part of our process, to join PRAP as an organization, we're going to open up for membership to expand our current group of comrades and fighters and people that, by fighters, I'm talking about fighters here in a political sense, because we have opted for another peaceful, non-violent approach to the resolution of the conflict. The group of willing volunteers together with whom we can pursue this objective. Please feel free to reach out. Even if you disagree with us, reach out and just tell us what you disagree about. At least we would have a platform for engagement. We think that we should do more and more of that. So thank you for your kind attention. We have presented the conflict resolution components, elements of the peace plan, just some components, which summary include the establishment of some UN monitoring mission, the establishment of a reintegration front, the establishment of a peace and Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and the establishment of a series of consultative platforms, and of course an announcement that we'll be taking the plan on the road. We're going to do a series of consultation with various stakeholders online, and we would progressively in the next couple of days invite different stakeholders to physical meetings, consultative meetings around the world, in North America, in Europe, in South Africa, and other parts of Africa, possibly Ghana, Nigeria, and just to be able to say, let's talk, let's create the platform to talk and to engage with each other. In the next presentation, we are going to present the component of the peace plan that focuses on the future of Anglophone Cameroon and the proposed constitutional arrangements. And in subsequent presentations, we would come back to the questions of humanitarian aid and refugees, return of refugees, and support for political prisoners and IDPs, as we unveil that package of what we propose needs to be done, as well as just coming up with practical considerations around what we think should be the future of issues around education, use of natural resources, international trading systems, trading status, relationship, governance arrangements, institutional constitutional reform, and the range of nuts and bolts that we think should go into a devolved region that captures the reality of one country, two people, as is the core purpose. So thank you for your kind attention. Let me know what you think about this by reaching out to us through the numbers that we have presented, and may God bless our people.